Yes, now it is recording. So
Awesome. Okay. Oh, it's been a while, but we're gonna do something different. We're gonna do kind of like a podcast sort of thing.
fun.
We're gonna make it easy.
Love it. Easy is my favorite. And I live on Zoom, so it's perfect.
Okay. So, what sort of like, do you remember any of the assigned reading topics that you had in school? Because I've been going through this list on this school study media like TV tropes page, and there's so many books that I have not read slash did not know were appropriate for like school topics.
I made a list of some of the ones that I remembered, or the ones that I like, some of the ones that were like the highs, and I was like, yes, these are great. And the ones that I was like, why does anyone want anyone to read this? Why?
Oh, like I think the earliest assigned reading that I remember was probably it was like the mixed up files of something or other. My God, I forgot what the full title was, but like I remember these kids, they like ran away from home, this like brother and sister, and then they went to go live in a museum, and then it turns into like this big, not a conspiracy, but this huge, you know what, here, this is gonna bug me. Let me look it up.
Isn't that the wonderful thing about Google though, is that like when you have those moments where you're like, I don't know, what was that thing? Like the other night I was having a game night with my friends, and he was like, oh, we're both Disney fans, right? So we were like, oh, we're going to take each other out. He got the easiest question in the world. Like, hey, what was the March Hare? What did the Mad Hatter tell the March Hare not to put in the stopwatch? Was it butter or mustard or ketchup? And I'm like, that's really easy. That's your question. And mine was about a Disney movie from the 70s called The 10th Avenue something or others, about like a women's choir that got messed up in like a robbery. And I was like, yeah, okay, because that's the same question. Sure. Cool. Without Google, you would have been able to tell me anything about that movie. Yeah, sure. That's the same.
Here we go. The mix-up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. It says the book follows siblings as they run away from home to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. Oh my God. Wow. I remember I thought it was cool that they ran away and they went to go like squat in a museum. And since the book was like written in the 1960s, all the kids were confused about like why ice cream sundaes cost like 10 cents.
Wow, that's nice. The scale is not even like accurate of that anymore. Like it'd be like, no, like it's fine. You can work an hourly wage, and for an hour you can get like an ice cream, right? And like,
Yeah.
no, that's not how any of this income stuff is supposed to work. Like, no, guys.
What was do you remember what the first like book that you were ever assigned to read was?
I remember that we got to pick our own. And that was a big deal for me, that it was like, okay, you get to pick your own book. And I was super excited about that because I really love books. And my mom had got me a set of Little House on the Prairie books. And so I was trying to figure out like which one I would do. And so I decided to do the last 4 years first, because that's the last one, but that's also the shortest one. So I was like, okay, I'll do that one. That'll probably be really easy. And it was really, and like I loved it, but like it was a really deep book for a little kid, because like she almost dies in childbirth, and there's a couple that like wants to take her baby and like offers her like a horse for the baby, and it was like, wait, what? Because I thought it was going to be like watching the TV show, which in a way it was, but also like as an adult now, I sometimes watch Little House on the Prairie and think, why did my parents let like a 3 and 4 year old kid watch the show? Like this is really messed up. Like there's episodes that have some pretty deep stuff, and I was like, this is not really a kid's thing, is it? Right? Yeah, I was like, I'm like, these are kind of intense. Like, okay. Like there's one episode where like a girl is being raped by like her father, and it's like, oh my gosh. Like, and then I remember there was one too that it was really scary to me. That was a little boy who was mute, and they like kept him in like a cage and like beat him and stuff. And I was like,
in Little House on the Prairie?
Yeah, I was like, does this have anything to do with like life on the prairie, or it seems like there's a lot of circuses that come through here, I guess, just to give the show like interesting things to do. But yeah, some of them are kind of intense. So yeah, the book was a little more intense than I thought it would be. And like it ends with like their house being on fire and like they lose everything, but like a few like little percent. So it was pretty heavy. But I was like, all right, this is my first like assigned reading. I'm gonna write a really good book report. And I actually still have the book report that I wrote for it. So
Really? Oh wow.
I do.
I think a book that we were given to read that I did not think that I would like, but I actually ended up really liking was have you ever read The Giver before?
Yes.
I love The Giver, and I'm not usually a person who really likes sci-fi or like I'm not a huge dystopian, let's say, sort of fan, but I read that, and I think the other like dystopian like YA, I guess, novel or book or whatever that we had to read. It's called The Girl Who Owned a City. And whenever I ask people about that, they have no idea what the heck I'm talking about.
I'm gonna have to look that one up now. That sounds like a cool. I'm gonna have to add that to my list.
I have very vague memories of this book, and it was like there's this like virus or this illness or something that goes around and it kills everybody above the age of 12. And so like all the kids are, it's kind of like a more messed up version of like those those plots in cartoons where all the adults disappear and then all the kids are like, oh wow, this is awesome, and then later on they're like, oh wait, no, I actually miss my parents, we have to find a way to get them back. It's like that, but like throw in some Hunger Games sort of thing.
Yeah. I'm just like, yeah, it's gonna be a little harder than that, kids. Not gonna be so easy to get them back now. Yeah, I didn't read The Giver in school ever. I actually made the mistake of reading The Giver when I was 8 months pregnant, which was a horrible time to read it because I ended up like sobbing at like the end of every chapter. And then of course, when the book was finished, pretty much just like collapsed and cried for like an hour. I was like, like it's a beautiful book, but yeah, if you're not in like a really good emotional place, not a good book to read because
you kind of have to be in like the right headspace, I suppose.
Yeah, it is a good story, but oh my gosh, yeah, I was not prepared for it to be quite so like as the story started to unravel at the end, I was like, wait, no, what? And just tears.
Apparently there are a couple of sequels to the book, but I haven't read them, so I don't really know what happens. Apparently there's some sort of debate as to whether or not they're actually canon to the series or not. I think most people consider it to be. Did you watch the movie?
I did watch the movie. I'm a big Swiftie, so I was not going to miss anything that had Taylor Swift in it. So I was like, that's actually why I read the book first, because I wanted to read the book before the movie. So I was like, okay, I'll read the book. Fine. It's cool. I'll read the book. And then I was like, I loved it. And I didn't actually, I kind of feel like it does that thing that happens a lot of times with books, right? Like you can kind of go, the book was good and the movie was good, but they're not really the same thing. They've got a little bit of stuff that's just different enough that you're kind of like, yeah, is it really the same story? Because it didn't feel like it, like, but it was still good. They did add some extra stuff that I was okay with for the movie, but I feel like, the way I read, and I'm sure a lot of people read too, is like when you read, that movie comes alive in your head. So then you see the movie that somebody else makes and you're like, okay, great, this is going to be like seeing my movie, and it's not your movie. It's somebody else's movie. That may or may not line up with the book exactly.
I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me was the setting, because it didn't look the way that I sort of imagined. Like I sort of imagined like a more Pleasantville sort of thing, and to me the setting kind of looked like the leftovers pieces of the Aeon Flux set or something like that.
It did. I don't know why, but I thought everything was very like going to be like very 70s. I don't know why, but 70s. Yeah, me too. Yeah, it was very 70s. And I was like, it's going to feel like that. And then it was, yeah, very industrial and strange, and like their house even felt so like cold and different like than I
Yeah,
thought it was going
it was a
to.
little too, I guess, not sterile. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it maybe it's a little too futuristic,
Yeah,
a little too postmodern.
yeah, a little bit.
I also imagine it to be more retro.
It just has that feeling to it, you know, like, and I mean, I think that's the thing is that, you know, thinking about like that and the Hunger Games, like I think what she did that was so good with the Hunger Games is that while it obviously is like futuristic, while it's so good is it feels about like a lot of things that like we would have read like, you know, like depression era stuff and like things like that, that like you're familiar enough with like the images, the feelings or whatever. And I think that's where they really missed the mark on the movie. Like there were good things they added to the movie. I did like what they did, not just because I love her, but I did like what they did with Rosemary's character and like fleshed out her a little bit more. That was kind of a cool thing to give her
Yeah.
a little bit more. I'm always happy to give female characters a little more to do. So I thought that was cool. But yeah, just not exactly what I was expecting because I finished it and I was kind of like, huh, no, that wasn't what I thought, but it was good.
uh in high school, hmm, what was your favorite, or not favorite? Did you have a book that you like to read and that you still kind of like to this day, I suppose?
That's easy. Little Women. Ever since the first time I read Little Women, I love it. And I loved it. Like I actually read it the first time in like fourth grade, but it was one of those like really abridged ones. And I thought, oh, this is a good book. And then when I was older, I found like the whole version. I was like, oh, this is even better. So like I'm still to this day like obsessed with Little Women. I've seen like the
I love Little
musical,
Women too.
right? Like it's the best story. I've seen all the movies. We actually went to Louisa May Alcott's house when we went to Boston 2 years ago.
Really?
It was
Oh, what was it like?
amazing. And it was so
That's
cool. Like
amazing.
it was so amazing being there. Like when we walked in, like you kind of go in the back through like a gift store part first, and then you get to go in, and then they show you like a documentary, and like they have like the plaster cast that Amy made. Like they have
Really?
those. They have all of these like amazing things, and I have the distinct advantage of I had my son with me. He was 4 at the time,
Aw.
and he was getting a little rowdy during the tour, and I was kind of like, buddy, let me focus. My husband was trying to take him, and he ran over to Beth's piano and played it. So
Oh
my
no.
son has played Beth's piano. You're not actually supposed to do that, but he did. Then my husband took both of my sons out to the car, and the lady that was giving me the tour noticed that I had on like a Hello Dolly t-shirt from like the Kennedy Center, how I'd seen it. And she was like, oh, are you an actor? And I said, yeah, I am. And she said, did you know that the real Meg, whose name was Anna, was an actor and actually started the first community theater in Concord? And so she took me to like Anna's Meg's room and like
Oh,
showed me all
really?
these things that they had and told me all this history about her and like starting this community theater and like how they were so active in theater and how the family loved it, which isn't really a surprise when you think about the Alcott family. I mean, like I was like, oh gosh, I never thought about it, but I guess that makes sense. But and then as we were leaving, she said, you know, since you and Anna are such kindred spirits, and I was kind of like, oh my gosh, Meg's always been my favorite. I was like dying. She said, we're gonna let you out the front door like company. We don't usually let people out the front door. So they opened the front door and like let me leave Orchard House
Wow.
out of the front door. And my husband was watching from the car because he was wondering when I was coming out. And he said, when I walked out, he said, you would have thought that I had on like a period gown. He said, like, you looked like you were in costume, like you were like, I was having my moment. Like I knew this was like my one time to leave Orchard House as like company of like the Alcott family. So I was going to enjoy it and live it to the fullest. And I did it. So I love Little Women. I love Little
Have
Women.
you seen like the movie adaptations?
I have they're very distinctly ranked in my mind. I think
Oh, tell me the
yeah,
rankings.
the absolute best one is the Winona Ryder version. It gets it
Yes, I agree.
it's perfect, right? Like it tells exactly the stories that it needs to tell. The cast is perfect. She's amazing. Susan Sarandon is Marmee, so good. I
The
love
costumes are accurate.
the costumes are accurate and beautiful. They really do have, like, when Meg comes out in that blue dress that everybody's like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, that's not fancy enough. It's perfect. Like, it was exactly what it was supposed to be. And then they've got her in like the low cut dress at the party when Lori sees her and is like, you make it up like that. Like, that's not you. Like, they, all the little details are there, like the wedding, like when they do the transition from like young Amy to older Amy,
Yeah.
Kristen, like Kirsten Dunst and Samantha Mathis match perfectly. Oh, it's so good. Every detail about that movie is like perfect. I love it. Um, I actually prefer the Katharine Hepburn one next, even though it's not
The
as
Woman.
perfect. Yes. Because I think she, because of her independent spirit and what a strong woman she was, I think she really got Joe. And I think that that's good. And they did do a good job of making sure to hit the essential points of the script. So that was good. Next, I like the version that's the June Allison, Elizabeth Taylor, Peter Lawford version. A little more fast and
Oh,
loose with the script. A little
it's
off.
kind of awkward. At least Elizabeth Taylor is to me. I remember I was
She
browsing YouTube
is.
and I was watching clips of like the different versions of Little Women, and there's the scene where Amy, she gets punished for bringing
It's
what's
bad.
it called to
The pickled
school, and
limes. Yeah, the pickled
yeah,
limes.
and it's in watching Elizabeth Taylor trying to embody like a 12-year-old. It's so combined with like the over the top, the theatrical acting of the time period. It's so funny.
It is, but I still like it better than the version that came out 2 years ago because I hate that movie
Yeah.
so much. Like, it could have been so good. I heard Saoirse Ronan and I was like, okay, this will be good. And
And
then
then I heard Emma Watson, and it was like,
yeah,
no.
yeah, that's exactly the point for me. I went, well, it could have been good, I guess. So
Well, never mind.
it was such a disappointment. She's so not right for Meg, like, at
I feel like a
all.
lot of casting directors just kind of look at Hermione and then they base every single role that Emma Watson has around that. Like, oh, she has brown hair and she reads, so let's cast her as Belle, but let's also cast her as Meg, even though I'm sorry, I don't think Emma Watson's a very great actress.
I don't either. And I
And
did
her accent throughout the whole movie is just it's no. It's
no,
very bad.
it's so bad. And I didn't like the choices that they made with the costumes. I get that sometimes people pick things because they're going to be pretty if they're slightly anachronistic, and that can work. These weren't pretty. They didn't fit the time period, and it was weird that the sister mostly just stayed in the one color. That was all just strange. It was just all weird. Like, it just
They all had like, you know how in shows like, you know, Power Rangers or like the Powerpuff Girls or like or what else is there? There's a whole bunch of magical girl TV shows like Sailor Moon or whatever.
right.
Uh they all have a set color that they have to wear. That's what the costuming reminded me of. Like they're all a part of a superhero team, but they all have to wear one color, and that's it.
It was weird. It didn't make any sense because the story covers so much of their life that's like really, like, kind of as you're like coming into your own and everything. So you would think that you might sometime be like, well, I know I'm Amy, but I don't want to wear blue anymore. I really want like a different color dress. Like, I don't want to wear this anymore. And Amy was the particular casting point for me. As much as I really didn't like Emma Watson, that bothered me even more. I did not like Florence Pugh. She did not work
I
as a
like
little
Florence
girl. It
Pugh, but I
was
don't like her here.
no, it didn't
It
work.
doesn't.
Like, she was already so, like, when she was even still trying to be like a little girl and she was like, hi, I'm Amy. I was like,
It's so
what?
disorienting.
Like, no,
And
you're
I don't
supposed to
mean
be
to
like
sound like
12.
I'm hating on her voice or anything, because I'm not. I love her voice. It's just it
Right,
doesn't work.
yes. It just didn't work for this. Like, in other things, great. But if you're going to try to be either playing a 12-year-old or kind of like, we acknowledge that she's so little, you kind of have to go there somehow and either get somebody else who's younger to do it, or Greta Gerwig should have pushed her more to, could
When
you
I
sound a little
first saw
younger?
some clips, I thought they aged her up or something. No, they didn't. They just kind of kept everything the same, and then they just cast like a full-grown adult as, and I'm like, all right. I don't know how this is supposed to work, but okay.
That's a choice. And I also didn't like what they did with Marmee. It really felt like I love Laura Dern, but I didn't like script wise what they did with her. Like I feel like she did a fine job with doing what she had, but they made her too, like, I don't know, too upbeat and too folksy. And like I think what's so good about
Yeah,
Marmee is that, like, I think why Joe loves her and why you love her is she can't be too perfect. And you get that the girls love her and that they, respect her and all this stuff, but like she can't feel too much like a just like a paragon of perfection. She has to be like a real person.
that's it. That's
Even
exactly what it is.
even though they tried to give her moments where like she'd be like, "Oh, I'm not perfect." Eh, but if you feel
What
perfect,
are
it doesn't
you
really
though?
right? Like, are you sure? Because you seem perfect. So yeah. I love the Little Women musical too. I think that really captures the girls
I
really
have
beautiful.
not been able to see the musical, so I can't.
It you should definitely check it out. It's really good. It really honors all four of them. Oh, the other Little Women movie that I love too is that version that came out where Leah Thompson's the mom,
Yeah,
and yes, that one's really good too. And like most people don't even know that one. And uh it's so good. I can't I see. I don't even remember the actors in it, but it's like a modern adaptation of it. And I feel like they did a good job of hitting the marks on like the stories that were important and what that would look like now, even though yeah, the details are kind of changed up some, obviously, because like, it's more clearly defined things like Beth has cancer and things that it's like,
uh,
that would make more sense now. And like Joe, instead of like cutting her hair to sell it for money, shaves her head out of solidarity with
yeah.
Beth when she loses it. So like it has some beautiful moments that really do, even though they're very, very modern, just really capture those girls. Because I know you as a fan, like once you really know those, that they're like family, like they really are your, they're so real, and they're so, you can tell how much she loved her family and how much they meant to her by how beautifully it's written. So
There's a great video on YouTube by, I don't know how you say her name, Micah Tours, Micarah, and she made a whole video dissecting the costumes of the newest Little Women adaptation and why it doesn't work. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, you should check it out. It's really good.
oh my gosh, I'll have to watch that because
What else did we read?
yeah.
I remember we had a Shakespeare semester, and we read Romeo and Juliet, and we also watched the movie adaptation with, not the good one. We watched the one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, the cringe fest.
See, that's my favorite. I know that's so crazy, but that's actually my favorite of the Romeo and Juliet movies. I'm a big Baz Luhrmann fan, and like I love all of his. Well, it's either like you love his bombast and his cheesy stuff, or you're like, that's crazy. I don't like
Or you're
that.
just like, no.
And I'm like, I am here for it. I'm here for like the swords as guns and like the quotes on the buildings and the
Calling the gun a sword and
I'm here for all of it. I love that. We actually the theater company that I'm artistic director for, that was actually our first production. So we just did that a few months ago, Romeo and Juliet. So I went back and watched after it was over like a bunch of the movies because I didn't want to watch them before. So I watched afterward. But I love the Julian Fellows version with Haley Steinfeld. That one's really beautiful. That one's
I
good.
think my favorite version has to be the one with Olivia Hussey.
The
And the guy
Zeffirelli,
looks
it's
like Zac
classic.
Efron.
Oh, he does look like Zac Efron. Like, see, that should prove Zac Efron is timeless, because there is a man then who people were like, that's Romeo. And I'm like, yes, but this is the magic of Zac Efron. He's timeless.
Exactly.
He's
That's
classic.
so
Like,
funny.
he's seriously like, when I think of Taylor Swift song style, that's him. Like, Zac Efron will never go out of style. Zac Efron will always magic and wonderful. Shakespeare is a mixed bag for me too, because I've revisited it in high school and in college. I love, and I finally figured out what the deal is. I love his love stories, whether they're the comedies or the tragedies. I love Romeo and Juliet. I like Love's Labor's Lost and Much Ado About Nothing. I don't like anything that's the history. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, all the King Henrys and the Richards, I'm just
Yeah.
like, no, thank you.
No,
I'm not a big fan
no,
of that sort of thing.
no, not a big fan of that at all. But I do like his love stories. I do think that he does those really well. And I mean, like, even as you can see, like how other adaptations have come up, like, Twelfth Night is like, um, She's All That, like, like there's all these different
Yeah.
movies that people have like people keep changing up the stories on because they're so fascinating. I'm like, yeah, he was good with love stories. I think he was a better rom-com writer than people give him credit for.
That's a great way to look at it.
And I know technically Romeo and Juliet's a tragedy, but but I still think his strength was as a rom-com guy, truly.
Me too.
Oh
Oh, goodness.
gosh, yeah. No, but like Julius Caesar, oh my gosh, no, not a fan of that either. Nope. No, not a big fan.
Did what was I gonna say? What was a book that you didn't think that you would like, but you actually ended up really liking? Or maybe the whole class. The whole class didn't like it, but they were like, you know what? This isn't actually that terrible.
I think for me, that would be when I was in college and it was in Great Books and we read Kiss of the Spider Woman. I'm pretty sure I was the only person out of 200 people who liked that book. But I really liked it. I thought it was different and dramatic, and it's a cool story. It's from the point of view of these two prisoners, and one of them is like a florist, so he has like this really detailed dramatic eye for beauty and things, and as they're being tortured, unfortunately, because they're both political prisoners, um they go through, he to escape, he tells him about all these movies that he's seen, so it's all juxtaposed with like all this intrigue of like, why are they both in prison, what's going on, like how are they trying to use them against each other to do things. Then you get interspersed with all of these really beautiful, glamorous, and kind of wacky movies, because they're all B movies from like the 40s, so it's like stuff like Attack of the Cat People, so but like the cat people are all like these like, glamorous women that wear like form-fitting gowns and diamond earrings and stuff like that. And so it's all this like really crazy stuff. So I didn't think I would like it because I didn't even know it that well. Like I was like, okay, there's a musical of it, but I didn't really know anything it was about. And it ended up
There's
being,
a musical?
yeah, there is a musical of it. Yes.
Is it the same title?
It is. And
In Broadway?
it's been on Broadway. Like Vanessa Williams was in it, and like Cheetah Rivera was in it. Like it's had like a lot of like famous people, and it's I know it a little bit now. I haven't seen it, all of it, but I know a little. And it's just this really unique, beautiful story, and I just ended up really liking it. And I know there were a lot of people who were like, it's weird, I don't get it. Like, why does it go back and forth between the movies and these two guys being tortured? Like, what is it? And I was like, but it was so different. I think that's kind of probably what I ended up liking about it, that it was just it felt different and new, and like new people that I didn't know that I wanted to know more about. So I like that.
I think a book that I think the book that we all thought was going to be really boring, but then I think the whole class actually kind of ended up getting into it was The Great Gatsby, surprisingly. And I was like, I'd heard about The Great Gatsby. I heard about what a great novel it was, and we read the little summary on the bag about what it was about, and I was like, oh, this is going to be so boring. But then it actually surprised me, and it's actually, I think, I won't say it's one of my favorite books, but I did end up really liking it. And then we watched the movie version with Mia Farrow in it, and I remember everybody laughing when Myrtle got hit by the car because it was just really badly done. It's like she went flying, and so did, and the leg went, and oh my god, it was just it was just funny.
I love
They're
Gatsby.
all terrible people.
They are. That's the thing. That play is that story is only, that book is only full of terrible people. They're all terrible. Like they're all terrible in their own way. That's part of what makes it so interesting. That's definitely, we're actually adapting that. It came into public domain, so I'm actually helping adapt that to a play that we're going to do this summer. So
Oh yeah, where is
Yeah.
it?
It's with my virtual theater company. We're going to be doing
Oh,
it.
that's really cool.
So I'm very deeply immersed in Gatsby right now. I'm basically like rereading it once every 2 weeks right now because we're working on the script. So I've read,
Oh
I
no.
think I've read The Great Gatsby 3 times this year so far. So yeah. But I'm definitely very in their world now. Like I feel like I really know them. So, and it's a fact. It's really fascinating, and I do think sometimes the extra stuff from Nick can drag on a little bit. Like I'm like, okay, I get it. Your
Yeah.
grandfather went on a trip, and there were oysters and something, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what were we talking about? Like, where are we? Like, but I really do like the character development, and it's really fascinating. And as far as have you seen the new movie, the Leonardo DiCaprio Carey Mulligan one? Have you seen that one
Yeah.
yet? I
I
love
remember everybody was so split down the middle about the adaptation and how it looked and whether or not it like undermined the message of the book about like excuse me, about like extravagance and sort of getting lost in it and losing sight of things that are like really important and things like that. And I don't know, where do you stand about that whole thing?
I think it was good. I like it because I do think that making it so glamour, I still think that it seems like glamorous in that way that like, you know how sometimes if you watch like just a little bit of either like a show on Bravo or Keeping Up the Kardashians, it might seem like a good idea for a little while to live like, wow, can you imagine if your kitchen was that big? But you don't really want to be those
How
people. You don't,
kitchen with an island is a
right?
dream.
Yeah, you're like, I don't really want to be these people. I think that's probably more of like a more modern and maybe younger sensibility look of that. So I think that's why maybe some people were like, oh, well, no, I like the older, I like the Mia Farrow one, that it was because it was more simple and maybe more period accurate, definitely, because there was obviously no Jay-Z in the 20s. But not yet. No Sean Carter yet. But I liked it. I'm a Baz Luhrmann fan, so I was like, I am here for the spectacle. Yes, all of it, the fireworks, the lights, and I do think that
All of it.
all of it. I'm here for all of it.
We all the things.
All the glitter, all the fringe, all the everything. I think it really did a good job of making you kind of get like the lengths that he had gone to create Gatsby, the lengths he'd gone to create the life and the world that he had created. I think it did a better job of kind of giving you that kind of wow spectacle. Because it's easy for Robert Redford to just be like, hello, I'm Robert Redford and I'm gorgeous. And you're like, I'm sorry, were you talking? Yes, sure. And and he was fine in Great Gatsby, but I feel like as far as like the life that they showed he created, it was definitely a little more wow and awe-inspiring. And I think that that's what you kind of need for Jay Gatsby, is it can't just be like, oh, he's like a rich guy who throws some parties. Like, okay, there's a lot of rich people who throw parties. This had to be like, he has what in his kitchen and like all these shirts and like all like this is crazy. And I think that kind of fed into it more, the idea of like what all he had done to build all this up to get her back and kind of give you those like epic feelings. So I was a pretty big fan.
There are a lot of people who are like held firm to the belief that no matter what, the book will always be better than the movie. Is there a movie adaptation that you do like that you think is just as good as the book, if not better? There has to be at least one. To me, that one is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Ooh, that's a good one.
The movie is very good. It's just as good as the book, I think.
It is. You may be right with that. Gosh, I was thinking, I was like, oh no, the book's always no. They really did that. There, it really is a beautiful, just on point. Nothing superfluous. Everything is well cast. Everything is well performed. No, yeah, wow.
There are a few things that are cut out, but it's fine.
Yeah,
They streamlined it, but they did it in a good way.
they did. And that's the thing. Like, I was a huge fan of The Divine Secrets of the Aya Sisterhood. Like I loved the book. I was obsessed with the book. The movie came out and I was like, what is this? Like, no, like you changed like big plot points. Like, no, what? No, no. I still get like angry when I think about that. Like I have to be like, the movie just doesn't exist. Because it wasn't good and I didn't like it. And it was just insulting to the work, and I just pretend it doesn't exist because it was so viscerally upsetting when I saw it. I was like, oh, like I was sitting there like my friends were like, are you okay? And I was like, I just hate this movie. They're like, you like the book? And I was like, yeah, well, this movie is really bad, so I hate it. Um, but so, yeah,
That's
like
awesome.
I was I still get angry. There was no reason to change from it being the beautiful imagery of the elephant and talking about like being one with nature and like them being queens and all this to like a stupid airplane and like a parking lot. No, no.
What?
Yeah. So okay, in the end of the book, the last story, like because the mom and the daughter have a very abusive relationship and it's very conflicted and it's all about like how you heal from it and how you move on. And she remembers as she's kind of trying to work through and process all of this, she remembers a time that her mom there was like there were elephant rides in like a parking lot and they're like little Louisiana town, like a real elephant, and they didn't have the money, and
Yeah.
the mom ended up getting the money, and so they go and they ultimately get to ride the elephant, and she's like, okay, like Sita, like, you know, here we are, we're going to do this, and like we're queens now, and we're riding our elephant, and you know there's this, and it's all this beautiful imagery, and it's so powerful, and it's really cool, and it provides a nice button and a kind of nice way to kind of give her a moment and kind of give the reader a moment to go, okay, well, I guess this is part of how we'll get closure from this, okay, and how she's going to move on. But then in the movie they have it be like, no, it's just like a tiny little airplane that they're like taking up in like circles, and it's like, I'm like, what, for what reason, like why, like the elephant was really cool for like all of the reasons of the, you know, that it was like, oh, it was like this real thing and it was all this. I have no idea why they did that. It was really annoying, and I just
That's so bizarre.
it's the dumbest change. And like I said, it would be one thing if they had just cut it, because yeah, like, you know, there's not really any book you can think of that they don't cut something from. Like they always cut a few things. Like
Yeah.
fine, I would have rather they just cut it than change it to the airplane thing. Like I still don't know what the point of that was. Like Callie Corey, if you ever hear this, I don't know why you did that, but whatever. Don't agree with her choice. Still don't agree with her choice on that.
That's great. Goodness. We didn't have to read this in school, but I heard that Wuthering Heights is very good. I still don't really know what it's about.
Wuthering Heights is really good. I like it. It's I actually prefer Wuthering Heights to Jane Eyre as far as the Bronte sisters books go. Wuthering Heights is very good. It's super romantic. But it's also
What's it about? I don't really know much about it. I get all the information through osmosis of like other people talking about it.
basically there's a young girl, and her father brings home this little boy that he found like starving in London, and they're like, oh, we'll raise him here. So they're not actually relatives. It's important that we bring this up because it will come back up. And he falls in love with her even when they're little, and they're really close and they're really good friends, and he's really brooding and mysterious even as like a kid, and as they grow up they become more like affectionate and everything, and she wants to have a relationship with him and she doesn't, and she makes some horrible choices, ends up with somebody else, and then the insanity ensues from there basically. So it's a really interesting love story about these people that you're like, just get married here and you could have saved everybody a whole lot of what comes next. And I'll let you read what comes next at some point, because there's a lot of and what comes next. And if you're ever looking for a film adaptation of it, the one with Ray Fiennes and Juliette Binoche is perfect. So
Ray Fiennes?
Yes, it's so good. Okay. And it's so good, and it's really faithful to the adaptation. I love it. And oh yeah, that's a good one.
we had a period in school where we kind of, yeah, the Shakespeare period. I almost forgot, and we had to read a bunch of his plays. I think the one that we read and we had to act out, it was A Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was actually really fun.
That is a good.
I don't
See,
think
he's
a
a
lot of
good rom
kids
com. He's a good rom com guy. He's good with that. Like
fun.
he gets that good. He gets that. I think
Did
he's.
you have to read? Did you ever have to read like horror movies, horror books, or something close to that in school? I think the closest one that we did read was Carrie.
Oh gosh. No, I'm like, I hate that kind of stuff. So I'm glad. I don't think we ever had to read anything. I think the closest thing we probably would have read to that would have been Frankenstein. So that was.
Oh, we didn't get to read Frankenstein. Not that kind of classic literature.
I thought that was boring. I didn't like
Me
it.
too. I'm sorry, sci-fi horror movie
It was
/ novel fans. I could not get into Frankenstein no matter how many times I tried.
no, I couldn't either. And something that like took forever for me to appreciate, I do now, but I didn't used to. And this is gonna be very controversial because a lot of people really love her. I was not always a big Jane Austen fan. It's kind of only recently that I'm like,
It's kind of like you know how when you eat food and you have to have an acquired taste for certain things? I feel like that's the case for like Jane Austen or a lot of classic novelists out there.
I think
I
so.
also could not, well, it's not I couldn't get into her, it's just like it took a while and it grew on me eventually. I think a book that I never really got into, no matter how hard I tried, was Huckleberry Finn.
Yes.
Reading it was just this really big chore, and I super did not want to do it, and I couldn't. Every time I picked up the book, I just like skip to the end, and I'd be like, oh, how many pages do I have left to read on this chapter? And
Yeah.
could not.
No, I'm not a big fan of that either. Mm-mm. Nope. No.
This wasn't assigned reading in school, but I loved Anne of Green Gables.
Oh
I
yes.
identified so strongly with Anne and her way of speaking and her like temperament, her struggle with people spelling her name wrong all the time.
Definitely.
I still love it.
I love, oh yes, I love those books. They're so good. And she is such a good character. Like I love her sweetness and her faith in people and her I love her earnestness. Like she really does want things to be beautiful or want things to be unique. And like it's really cool how it matters so much to her, like to be special and to try to, and she's so caring too. Like she's not just somebody who like is, like a Regina George and like she wants, but like she wants things and she has a good heart. So that's.
She's caring and she has a good heart, but she's not a perfect character. Like she does have a bad temper and she holds grudges and stuff. And sometimes her brutal honesty is more brutal than honest, but that's what makes her a really good character.
I always thought she was too hard on Gilbert Blythe. I mean, seriously, he called her carrots one time and then that went on for
Me
like
too.
years. Like, girl, like
That's a
seriously.
grudge.
That was quite the grudge she held on him. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You'd think breaking the slate over his head would be enough, even after he said, no, it was my fault. But no, she just.
And just think if she never almost drowned on the pond, they probably never would have been friends. Like she just would have always hated him. And I'm like, that's silly. And I was glad that he was there to rescue her. And I was like, oh, good. Or they really be friends now? Okay, good. This is good. Good.
It always baffled me that she did not like her red hair and she thought that it was horrible and that it was like the worst color ever. Because I am so jealous of her hair color. I wanted red hair. I did not like my hair when I was little because it was dark and it was boring and it was so common. Like I wanted Anne's red hair, and she probably would have been like, "Here, you want my hair color? You can have it. I want your dark hair."
She probably would have. She, the red hair was always a sore spot with her. So I mean, yeah, no, it was, my goodness, yeah. No, she was fun. And like all of the adventures that she had, like all the crazy things, like, the cute things that she would do, like how she'd name things like the White Way of Delight and things like that. There were
Yeah,
like in her town that were just like, oh, it's Barry's Orchard or whatever. And it's like, oh no, it's this. And then the time that like she got Diana drunk on the cordial at the
I
tea
was just
party.
thinking about that, getting Diana drunk, which happens bafflingly fast in the movie, but it's a movie, whatever.
Oh, I do love like the big adaptation, the Kevin Sullivan one with Megan Fellow, like, and all that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. I love it. Like
Mm,
the
everything
costume,
about it.
so like,
The set, not the set, the scenery,
yeah, everything.
gorgeous.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And like all the acting in it is so good. Like, oh, I love that. I could watch that a million times. I love that. No, it's beautiful. Makes me
Have
want to go
you?
to Prince Edward Island and like
Yeah, that's what it is. Prince Edward Island.
soak it all in. It's so beautiful.
Ah, have you seen slash heard of the animated adaptation?
Oh, of the Anne books? Yes, I have
It was
watched
on
them.
PBS Kids, I remember, and I would come home from school and I would watch it whenever it would come on with my brother. He'd watch it with me. It
They're
was so
cute. I mean,
fun.
they're definitely a little different, but they're cute. And they kind of do have her spirit, which I feel like is important especially since they're aiming it more for kids. And they do have her creativity and her good heart and her enthusiasm for things. It's so
I
sweet.
feel like everybody who came after Megan Follows kind of copies her speech patterns, if that makes sense. If you know, it's hard to describe what I'm talking about, but like if you know what to listen for, I feel like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Her way of speaking and her mannerisms, uh like her inflections and things like that in her speech, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I definitely think people do that. I can't imagine there being a better Anne than her, and I think that's probably what a lot of people think, and that's why
And
they
with an
create use
on
that.
Netflix, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's just it's not for me.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan.
No, I wanted to like it. I really wanted to like it. I did. It's kind of like how I feel about, and these weren't school books, but I did read them a lot when I was younger. It's kind of like how I feel about the Babysitters Club books. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's another thing I couldn't get into, the Babysitters Club.
I was obsessed with them. Like I read all of them multiple times. Like I know exactly who I'm a mix of, Stacy and Marianne, in case you're curious. Like I very much, I love that whole world. And I loved, like, there was like an old TV show that was on, like, I think it was on HBO. Like by the time I saw it, they were rerunning on Disney. But like there was, and they did a pretty good job of like portraying the girls and the stories and everything. I just don't like the Netflix one because I feel like they
There's
lost
a
a lot in the
Netflix one?
process. Yeah, yeah, there's a Netflix new version of it, and it just doesn't have the same, it doesn't have the same like joy and the same energy that the other ones did. I feel
Yeah.
like I feel like they're trying to purposely tackle serious issues, and like, not that that's a bad thing to do. It's just, if you take these girls that I'm used to being in this context and then you try to put this with it, it's kind of like, the books that I read and that I loved were able to do things like, like they did have books about child abuse, and like Stacy always was a diabetic, so her medical stuff was always part of the journey. And
Yeah.
there were little bits of things, like, always. So it's not that I mind that they want to have it deal with modern issues or anything. That's fine. It's just that I feel like they kind of lost some of the joy and the fun that the characters have together,
Yeah.
and it kind of lands heavy constantly.
That's that's how I feel about the Anne with an E adaptation. Like if you want to do a different take on it, like if you want Anne's optimism to be a sort of coping mechanism for the life that she had in the orphanage, then you know, that's fine, I guess. I mean, I'm not against it. I think it's interesting. But again, like you said, you just kind of lose a certain something that
Yeah.
was so special about the original that I love so much about Anne is that, despite everything, that she remained optimistic just because, it wasn't a coping mechanism. That's just the kind of person that she was. And I thought it was really inspiring and very motivating. And I think that we need to have more of that, just more positivity, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And I think there are some people who are just naturally very upbeat and happy people, and I think that's okay. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely some of us who stress a lot and who, yeah, a lot. I admit that's me, and everything. And I think that's fine. But I think kind of that thing we can do, like where we make people other, is like, well, you have to have all this, you have to have all this bad circumstance, or you have to have all this. Some people have just been fortunate in some ways, in that they haven't had to deal with a lot of, trauma and things. And that should be okay too. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, they're not really fully developed people, or they're not really honest about what they're going through. They may just
Yeah.
be a happy person, and that's okay too. And whether they've gone through stuff or whether they haven't gone through stuff, I think we kind of just, if we're trying to make room for everybody to be at the table and everybody to be included, we kind of need to go, happy's okay too. Like that's
Yeah,
fine.
the positivity.
You can just be happy and positive. That's cool. Like
Fine.
we
This is
need
fun.
that. Yeah, we need that. Come sit with us. Like it's fine. Like yeah, like so yeah, I do think that they do that. I think that was kind of like, I don't know, did you read the Ramona books when you were little, like the Beezus and Ramona, the Beverly Cleary books? Did you read any of those?
I think I read one. I also read a couple of the Super Fudge series. I read Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, and then I read the second one. I think the second one was Super Fudge. Uh, I like. I remember I liked those.
I was a
Uh,
big fan of the Ramona books, but I feel like as they've tried to do, they did another modern movie of it, like with Selena Gomez and Jennifer
yeah.
Lawrence.
That's who it was. Selena Gomez and
I didn't get it. Like it lost again that joy that the books had, and that kind of like, that lightness that they had. So that
oh,
was,
what happened?
they just spent a lot of time focusing on the arguments. And that's not to say there aren't a lot of arguments between Beezus and Ramona, the two sisters, because of course they're two sisters. And one of them's a little and a pest, and the other one's like, oh gosh, she's driving me
Like, oh my gosh, she's so annoying.
crazy. So annoying. So like of course that always exists, but I think like in general, that the thing I loved about the Quimby family always was that they were so fun and so positive, even kind of as they went through different things in the books, like when the dad lost his job, or when, they were trying to get back to used to like the mom going back to work, and, having a new baby, like all these things, like they always managed to still have this like really fun atmosphere. And I feel like the movie kind of just gave you stress, 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 and they'll be
Oh, it's
okay in the
one of
end.
those like sibling relationships where they argue more than they show affection towards each other. That
It
sort of
feels, yeah, it
relationship.
feels like it, because there were always the little moments. And I think that was what I was thinking when I was watching it. Like I was like, I can't think of a book, because I think there are 8 of Ramona books. I couldn't think of a book where there weren't times, even though yes they would fight in every book too, there weren't times that like they would do something fun together. Do you know what I mean? Like they'd be like, okay, well, we'll
Yeah.
divide up our gummy bears, or okay, we'll do this. And I feel like you got all of like the stressful moments, and like none of the let's divide up the
That's
gummy bears,
fun.
or yeah, or let's
I get that.
make our own wedding. Like there was one time that like they like had to like switch wedding shoes or something, and like they were like making them at the last minute for like their aunt's wedding or something, and it was really cool. Like you kind of lost all of those little moments and just had a lot of like stress and schedules and blah, life is hard, and it's like, yeah, this is a lot for an hour and a half, and it's not really very fun. So disappointment.
Oh goodness.
But
Did you ever have to read Catcher in the Rye?
I have never read Catcher in the Rye. I still have never.
Me neither.
I hear people talk about it, and I know his name's Holden, and I
And he
think that's
wears a
about
red
it.
hat and he calls people phonies, and that's all I know.
See, you're 2 points further than I was because I had just had Holden. So there you go. So you've gleaned more from the zeitgeist than I have. So that was good.
What else? We also read Animal Farm,
Yes.
and I think we watched it too. I forget if we watched the live action adaptation or the cartoon adaptation.
We watched the cartoon, I remember.
You did?
I thought it looked like Charlotte's Web, which kind of felt strange.
Oh yeah. It did look like Charlotte's Web.
It does look like Charlotte's Web. I don't watch Charlotte's Web the same now because of that. I'm like, no, I remember what happened to the Animal Farm. Yeah.
Oh no,
I can't look at this barn the same now.
The dark as Charlotte's Web AU is actually Animal Farm.
It really is. Like, I think it is because I was like, I don't feel right watching this now because my sons were interested in it and I was kind of watching it like, yeah, I don't know about this now, guys.
I think we had to watch the live action one with the weird CGI mouths, and we just could never get into it. I think it was the uncanny valleyness of it all that kind of took us out of it.
Yeah, it's always funny to me when people call something like the live action version when they're like, and like that's CGI. They're not real. Like, no, like the live Lion King with like Beyonce. I'm like, Beyonce's not really a lion. So she's not a lion. She's a woman. So human. So it's not really live. And they did that. People were like, what do you mean? I'm like, they make the mouths move to look at the voice. It's a whole process. Like there's not actually a lion somewhere that sounds like Beyonce. Like that's not real.
That was a very weird adaptation.
Yeah, it was
a very weird reboot, let's say.
Yes, very much. I think all these reboots of the fairy tales like that are kind of a thing because I mean, Lion King is basically Hamlet, like pretty much straight up.
Yeah,
Hamlet, like cool. And like Little Mermaid, like I always loved it. I loved it so much when it came out. And like I saw it and everything. My parents were like, "Oh, hey, well, we'll get you like the real one, like the book." And the Hans Christian Andersen one is terrifying, because like she like they talk about like she's in pain.
It's extremely painful to walk.
It's painful to walk, and like her sister.
The version I read had
like help her
or something.
Yeah,
like constantly.
It's awful.
And it was like walking on a whole bunch of knives, and she lost her voice, and and then she has to kill the prince in order to get her voice back, but she says no, and then she bounces, and then she turns into sea foam, and then she has to wait however so many years before she can become an air spirit or something.
Yeah, and it's like, wait, what the heck just happened here? Like, this is not, there's no crowd, there's no wedding, like there's nothing fun, like this stinks. I hate this book now. I was so devastated when I read this. I was like, this is The Little Mermaid? I don't like it.
Wait a minute.
So, I hope that they're not going to go quite that dark with the new one. So
it no doubt will be somewhat more dark and gritty and realistic or whatever, but let's hope they don't go down that route too far.
No sea foam, no air spirits. No, we're not going to do any of that. Like
no like bloody feet, please.
No, yes, none of that.
Okay, that's too much.
Yeah, I don't want to watch that. Like, no.
I mean, I'm excited to see what they're gonna do different, if anything, but
it will be interesting to see because they've all had, Maleficent had its own little twist, and it's all kind of they've given everything like its own little twist. So we'll see how that compares.
We basically got a Hamlet adaptation with the Lion King.
We did. So that was,
Do you not like reading Hamlet? Well, just watch The Lion King and you'll ace that quiz. No, don't actually do that. You'll probably fail. Yeah, because the names are different. So like, unless you're going to be really particular about that, then you'll be like, so when did you do that? I don't know who any of they either won't know who they are, or they'll start referring to the characters. Like they'll be like, well, Pumbaa and Timon. It's like, no, that's
it's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Like, no, like make sure you keep your name straight if you're doing your quiz.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting about them because I'm not a big fan of Timon and Pumbaa, honestly.
They're not my favorites either. And especially in that movie that they were like with all the bugs and everything. I was
To
like,
me,
cute.
they're kind of like the gargoyles from the Hunchback of Notre Dame
Yeah, they are.
movie. They're just they don't add anything. They're really annoying to me.
Oh my
Their
god.
scenes just seem like filler.
Yeah, I know. Not a big fan of that. No. Not a big fan of that at all. Well, I think I probably have to be going because I have rehearsal. So,
All right.
all right, but
Thank you for joining me. This was nice.
it was very fun. We got to talk
Happy
about a
to
lot
get
of
back
good
to
books
this
and
after
movies.
such a long time.
I will go ahead and